There is a version of English you were taught in school, and there is a version British people actually speak. To be honest, one of the biggest differences between the two isn't vocabulary or grammar. It is a handful of tiny, almost invisible words that Brits use constantly to soften everything we say. Without them, you can sound blunt without meaning to, even when you're being completely genuine. With them, you sound natural, polite, and genuinely like you grew up here. Today, I'm going to show you a few of them. And stay with me for the last one, because that one is my personal favorite and often misunderstood. The first word is just, and it does something incredibly clever for such a small word. It makes whatever you're about to say feel lighter, less like a demand and more like a casual observation you happened to have. Think about the difference between these two messages. Here's the first one. I am checking if you received my email. Perfectly correct, grammatically nothing wrong with it at all. But now compare that to this second one. I'm just checking in. Same meaning, completely different feeling. The first one sounds like a follow-up with your arms folded. The second one sounds like you barely care either way, which is basically the goal in British communication. The word does almost nothing grammatically, but socially, it does a massive amount. Without it, you are making a statement. With it, you're barely doing anything at all, and that is exactly the point. It's the linguistic equivalent of saying no rush at the end of an email. You also hear just at the start of requests, particularly when speaking to someone more senior than you or someone you don't know well. For example, I was just wondering if you had a moment. This is actually the standard way a British person softens a request to a boss or a stranger. Crucially, it implies that what you are asking for is minor, even when it very much isn't. I have included it in the opening line of work emails more times than I can count, and it never stops being useful. The second word is bit. It works a lot like just, but its main job is to soften the way you describe things or how you feel. Brits are, to be honest, incredibly uncomfortable with strong emotional language, and bit is one of the main tools we use to manage that. If a British person tells you they're a bit tired, they may well be exhausted. If they say something was a bit much, it was probably overwhelming. And if they tell you they're a bit busy at the moment, that basically means they're completely snowed under and would very much like you to go away politely. This word takes the edge off whatever comes after it, so the sentence lands much more softly than the reality behind it. You also hear it when Brits ask someone to do something, which I know sounds like it should be simple, but we find it extremely uncomfortable. I actually have a whole episode on this that I've linked in the description for you to check out. Asking someone directly to change their behavior feels very forward, and bit is one of the ways we soften that. For example, could you turn it down a bit? Is a perfectly natural British request. Without bit, the same sentence sounds blunt, to the point of coming across almost confrontational. With it, you're suggesting a small adjustment, barely worth mentioning, and the other person can respond without feeling like they've done something terrible. Everyone walks away with their dignity intact, which is honestly the dream. If you're finding this helpful so far, please take a moment to follow and give the show a rating, as it really helps me create more content like this for you. Now, on to the next one. Number 3, lovely. Now, lovely is a bit different from the first two. It's less about softening and more about warmth. And it's actually one of the most reliably British responses to almost any positive situation. Once you start noticing it, you will literally hear it everywhere. And I do mean everywhere. The classic example is a cup of tea. If someone offers you a cuppa and you want to accept, the natural British response is, "That would be lovely, thank you." Not "yes, please," though that does work too. In the UK, lovely is the ultimate comfort word. It's the word that comes out automatically when things are going well. It has this unique ability to make the other person feel instantly appreciated without you having to make a massive fuss about it. You also hear lovely stuff at the end of things rather than the beginning, and this one is incredibly useful to know. When a task is finished, a plan is confirmed, or a meeting wraps up and everything went fine, a British person might say, "Lovely stuff," in the same way someone else might say, "Great" or "Perfect." It signals that you are satisfied, that things are sorted and there's nothing more to discuss. Think of it as the verbal full stop on a successful interaction. You can also use lovely on its own as a response. If someone tells you they've booked the restaurant, you say, "Lovely." If someone confirms they'll be there at 7, you say, "Lovely." It's incredibly versatile, and once you start using it, it will start coming out naturally, I promise. And then there is sorry. I knew when I was planning this episode that this one had to go last because most people assume they already know it. Sorry is for apologizing. Except in British English, it is actually so much more than that. And this is one of my favorite things about the way we speak. Yes, Brits say sorry when they've done something wrong, but we also say it when we've done absolutely nothing wrong at all. And that is where it gets really interesting. In British English, sorry is basically a social lubricant. It's how you enter a conversation, approach a stranger, or move through a space without making anyone feel like they've been inconvenienced, even when they very clearly have been. Stick with me. If you're on the London Underground and you need to get past someone, you don't tap them on the shoulder and say, "Excuse me." You say, "Sorry, can I just squeeze past?" That sorry at the front isn't an apology. It is an acknowledgement that you're about to enter someone's personal space and you'd like to do it with their blessing. The just is in there doing its job too, as we know. The same thing happens with chairs. If you aren't sure if a seat is taken, a British person wouldn't say, "Is that seat free?" They'd say, "Sorry, is anyone sitting here?" The sorry softens the interruption before it even happens. If you lead with sorry, you'll find that people are much more likely to be helpful. What I find genuinely fascinating about this one is that it isn't actually about fault at all. It's just about awareness. When a British person opens with sorry, what they're really saying is, "I'm aware that I'm about to ask something of you, and I want you to know that I know that." It is, when you think about it, a very considerate little word. So there you have it. Just, bit, lovely, and sorry. 4 incredibly small words that show up constantly in everyday British conversation and do a very quiet but very important job. If your grammar is solid but something still feels slightly off when you speak in English, these are very often the words that are missing. Don't forget to take a moment to follow and rate the show. And remember, you can also sign up to my free newsletter. The link is in the description. Thank you so much for tuning in and supporting the show. I'll see you next time.